Welcome to another episode of the Peak Potential Success Show. My name is Fong, and today we have another great guest. He comes highly recommended by lots of people all around the world and also lots of people on my show. He's been helping lots of people all over the place bringing their ideas to life, not only to life, but also profitable as well. He has over 20 plus years of experience in the tech industry. He is in the forefront of digital innovation, working with startups and corporate innovators. He loves taking those ideas and transforming them into scalable success and profits. As a product developer, he's worked on products for some of the biggest brands out there, from Disney to L'Oreal to EA Sports and many, many more. He loves testing assumptions and iterating for success, facing those challenges that innovators face head on and helping them overcome those and achieve more and more success. In his book, The SALT Test, he helps entrepreneurs and innovators take their products from concept to scale and avoid pitfalls and failures. He loves building and advising high growth ventures and bringing those bold ideas to life. So please welcome business expert, a product developer, product innovator, and author, Mr. Kingsley Maunder.
Wow. Thank you very for the introduction. Amazing.
Well, thank you very much for being here. Always great to chat with people who has lots of great experience in helping people get their products into the real world and also making those products profitable and successful as well. For yourself, how did you become this person? Because not many people go this route. They go, oh, let's go into business, let's go into innovations and inventions. But you help those people bring those and changes those products into an actual business and become successful. So what's your origin story?
Yeah, great question. I think uh, it started off when you could decide where to go to university. You're so young, aren't you? And I was like, no idea. And my brother said, well, computers, that's going to be the next big thing. So, do computer science. So I did that. And it came out, and I came out in a period which was incredibly exciting to hit the world of technology. It really was booming, and it was the dot-com era. So joined startups, and I've been in startups, predominantly throughout the sort of the 20 years that I've done innovation, and had successes, as you've heard, and failures as well. And I think the one thing that's really driven me is the passion for innovation, taking a product, growing that product, and putting it into market. And I think that's the one thing that's really stuck with me is understanding a problem and finding a way to solve that problem, or in some cases, actually discovering a problem and solving those. And that's where, for me, the real passion lies on that side.
That's awesome. There's a lot of people out there who has a passion for innovating and a passion for creating businesses, creating ideas, creating products and whatnot, but they're unable to get it out there. They're unable to deliver the right message that actually gets people to get engaged and whatnot. Why do you think that's the case? Because usually people go in, hey, I created this. I know everything about this. I love this. This is my baby. I should be the one that puts it out there. How come they're sometimes not the person to do
Yeah, I think
it?
that was the first mistake, my first business, my first startup, and that was the mistake I made. I think it often comes down to attitudes, which I had in my first startup. If you build it, they will come. It's such a good idea. All you have to do is build it, and they will come. Particularly if you come from a technology background,
Mhm.
which I do. And it's only once you're out there do you realize that yes, building it is incredibly important, but then you've actually got to market it and sell it. And that's where the long game comes in. And that was the second lesson I learned is that you get into market and the success is unlikely, very unlikely to happen straight away. And you need to be patient, particularly if you're innovative and creative. You may be well ahead of the game. And hence, you just got to keep pushing. You've got to keep believing in yourself, keep believing in your product, and keep marketing and selling. But taking that back, you can really start to work on that right at the beginning. And I think it's because a lot of us go in with an idea and we build it straight away when we send it to market. And that's also the mistake I made is I spent all my money, which I saved over years, building this product. And it turns out that it probably wasn't the right solution for the problem from the beginning. And I could have done a much better job of that in my first startup.
Mhm. Now, you've worked with some of the biggest brands out there. You've seen lots of different people, lots of different innovations, lots of different products. What do you see as the some of the biggest important reasons why something is successful and something that's not. Like, I'm sure lots of people come up to you and go, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And you go, "Well, it doesn't check off these boxes, therefore it's probably not going to work." Like, what's that process that you go through?
I think there's two really. It comes back to my book, The Salt Test, and it's assumption traps. You know, we get caught by assumption traps in many cases, and what that means is we make an assumption and we work on that assumption as if it's fact without actually proving that first. And I think the biggest one that many of us make is is assuming that the problem exists. And that is the first thing we should do. Does this problem genuinely exist for the target market that you're aiming for? So going back to your question, those products that really succeed are the ones that genuinely know their target market and what problem they're solving for them. And in some cases, they may start off with a very niche target market just to really hit home and to grow off that niche target market, which allows them to expand. Those that often fail, I'm not saying in all cases, is they don't even understand their target market, or they're trying to go too broad with their target market, trying to satisfy too many people, and that's and then build a solution for them. And that's an understandable mistake to make because we're quite nervous about, okay, if I just hit this small niche, um, can I do enough? And hence we try to hedge our bets. Whereas my recommendation is really to focus on a niche target market that has a genuine problem that you can solve. And it reminds me of, as you say, I came from a technical background. I had to learn how to sell and market products. And someone once told me that the best way to sell something is either through pain or greed. And so if you can solve a pain, people are much more likely to buy than anything
Mm.
else. Greed, yes, absolutely. So if you can look for a pain to solve, you're much more likely to build a better product, which just makes it much easier to sell later on.
What would you say are some of the steps that people should take to get the confidence of the items that you talked about? Like they go, okay, niche, I have people who are interested, but is that enough? Right? When do I start moving into a broader scale? When do I start actually putting more money into it? How much time should I put into it if I do actually have a good idea? Like, what are some of the things that people can do to at least check off the boxes? Go, okay, I passed this test. Yeah, I passed this test. Yeah, I can move on to the next level. What do should people do?
Great question. And that's pretty much what the SALT test does. It walks you through that. And the first step really is as I've just mentioned, is understand your target market and the problem you're solving for them. And there are many ways you can do that. So you can go online and see if people are talking about this problem. Uh, the best way though is to find people within that target market and have open discussions with them. And the trick here is not to ask them, say, if you had this problem, would you use this solution? You just talk to them about, understand their problems, and then the next step is how do they currently solve those problems? And that will give you an insight into your competition. And sometimes the competition isn't a direct brand. Sometimes people say, oh yeah, the example I use is digital birthday cards. And the problem is I've forgotten to send someone a birthday card, and hence I'm going to send them a digital birthday card using my service. And someone might come across and go, well, actually, I just use WhatsApp, and that's competition. And
Oh
so
yeah.
the first steps is who's your target market, what problem are they solving, who's your competition, and is it a big enough problem for them to solve? Do they go somewhere else to solve this problem? Because if they just, oh, I just use this, there's not a big enough problem to solve. Once you've got that validated, then the next step is to try and build something, a prototype, as light as possible, and you try to sell it to them. And in many cases, what people do is they just have a landing page. So people come onto the landing page, it would describe the product, and you say, if you want to find out more, put an email address in and submit. And now some people say, well, it's just an email address, but we don't give our email addresses lightly because we know that someone's going to market to us. So it is actually a genuine sort of intent to find out more. So that's a very light way to do it, and a way I would recommend. But then you can use those email addresses to engage with those people and start to use them for your prototypes, your MVP.
You mentioned before about competition. You also mentioned about the fact that you have to solve a big enough problem for it to actually be sustainable. There are some cases where people go, okay, I do have a product that solves a big enough problem. However, the current product in place is owned or run by a big brand, a big company that everybody already goes to. How do you disrupt that so that you actually get heard? Like, how do you compete with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it comes down to any product that you build is what are the differentiators within your own product? Because if you just built a Me Too product, people are not interested. The fact that you to shift somebody from one product to another is incredibly hard because we're lazy. As humans, we're lazy. And so you've got to have a really good reason to get them to change their habits or behaviors. And so you need to find out what is it within the existing products that people are frustrated with that you can offer that will get them to switch across to you. And so if you don't have those differentiators, unlikely for them to shift. So a really good book around this is obviously Awesome by April Dunford. I recommend reading that book if this is of interest to you, because that will help you highlight, those differentiators.
Now, you also mentioned about the salt test, the book that you wrote for people who wants to know more about how to get their products out there and get noticed and whatnot. Why the salt test? What is this mysterious salt test that you did?
Yeah. So it comes back down to one of the keys, themes of the book is assumptions. And it, it, legend has it that Thomas Edison had this
Oh,
incredibly challenging, test to be interviewed. And the final step was he'd invite you down to the cafeteria
yeah.
and, order the food. And if you put salt on your food first, you wouldn't get the job. Sounds like you know the
Yes. I'm
story.
like, oh, I do know this
And
test.
you do. And that's it because you've made an assumption that the food isn't salty enough before you've tested it. And hence, if you put salt in your food, you're not going to become a successful innovator because you've made an assumption.
I see. That is awesome. It is one of my favorite stories about how to gauge and evaluate individuals. One of my other favorite ones is that somebody's going in for an interview, and the manager takes that person down to like the third or fourth floor to get a coffee, and they go back up to their office. And the test is to see whether or not that person suggests to go back down to put the cup back or not, to see if they're like, if they're reliable or they follow through on certain things. So I think that's pretty
Yeah.
cool too.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so when it comes to promoting and marketing a product, speaking is one of the important aspects of that. Being able to present something, be able to speak to individuals and present a good message. Is that something that you strived on and was good at from the very beginning? Or was that something you worked hard on to find out, okay, what is the best way to connect with people?
I think there's if you have it in you, absolutely, it's a brilliant way. People respond well to those who can present themselves, who can speak, who can talk at conferences or events. It's a great way, but that's not for everybody. And one of the approaches I recommend in the book is actually called the Bullseye Framework, whereby there is probably about 19, 20 different ways to promote your product. And it challenges you to go and have a look at each of those and find a way to actually promote your product. It could be influencer marketing. Okay, if you're to do influencer marketing, how would you do it? SEO, how would you do it? Uh, all of those different options that you've got, and you stress at each of them, and off the back of those, you then say, okay, the top six based on cost and what's likely to work for my target market, because you know who your target market is, so it might be Snap or LinkedIn depending on your target market. I will group these top six, and off the top six I'll choose my top three, and I'll test those top three. And one of those might be presenting, talking at events, might be hosting your own event, but you then track those three based on conversion of sales and cost. And once you find one, you then double down on that until you've exhausted that channel. Having said that, there are opportunities like SEO is a long game, and hence you might want to start working on that now while you do some Google advertising, if that's your short goal.
What would you say is a reasonable amount of time for you to test something until you go, okay, yeah, this is dead in the water, or no, you just have to give it some more time. Like, how do you gauge that issue?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I think the key thing here is to have your goals. And so you'll set your goals within each of those. And you say, right, for almost all of your experiments, not just the marketing experiments, say, right, this is what I'm aiming to achieve. This is the number I aim to achieve. And more importantly, or equally important, is this is a number whereby if I drop below this number, it's considered a failure over whatever time period you choose. Maybe it's 2 weeks. Ideally, quicker is better because that's cheaper. But the key is to then say, if I drop below this number, I will stop. Because, you know, it's in our nature to say, oh, I'm sure if I try a bit more, I can get it over. I can get it over. But when you do that number right in the beginning, it's with sort of, with a cold, with a fresh mind, you go, okay, this is where what counts as a fail. And if you're between those two numbers, then you can say, okay, if I try a little bit more of this, or if I experiment in this way, maybe I can get up to that number.
In some instances, is it because of not the right time, not the right place? Have you worked with a product before where, yeah, it didn't work out now, but given another 2, 3 years, we'll tweak a little bit and try it again. Like maybe that's the right market, right time, right place to do it.
You've probably hit on the most painful product story I have. So yeah, in 2008, I launched the first report on the top 50, beauty bloggers in the world, and that was, bought by L'Oreal. They then used that report along as other companies, and they looked at that, and they were then ended up being the first company to bring in Michelle Phan, as a YouTuber, because that was the recommendation of the report. So this was very, very early influencer marketing. In fact, the term influencer marketing was hardly used. I actually had the domain name influencer-marketing.com, and I couldn't even give it away, because but it was early days, and the revenue model wasn't quite there because people weren't used to it, and they weren't willing to put the investment in it. And I think in that case, if I'd pushed on, I know, we all know, if I'd pushed on for another 3 or 4 years, I would have become what influencer marketing is today. So it's very difficult to know. You just got to keep believing yourself and pushing forward. What I've realized years later, and this is actually what Jeff Bezos says in as well, is that you've got to push for at least 5 to 7 years for a product to truly make it. I think we look at all these massively successful startups and they've just grown, but those are the 0.001 percenters that everybody knows of.
Yeah.
Most startups need to just, persist and push and push and push. And if you believe it, you'll get there. I mean, the quote from Bezos is, I think they say, that he's got a plan for 5 to 7 years. They know how they want to get there, but they're not sure how, they know where they want to go, but they're not quite sure how they're going to get there. And you've got to be flexible and you've got to keep being persistent.
So when people come to you and go, "Hey, I got this idea, I got this product, I've checked off some of these boxes already, it's viable." Do you work with them like from a long like for a long period of time, kind of have this, here, here's our roadmap. Yes, it might take 3, 4 years for it to come to fruition, but if we kind of focus on this path, we'll get there. And then sometimes you go, oh, we need to pivot. Sometimes you go, oh, maybe it's not viable. Like, how do you determine or how do you convey that to somebody to have that type of patience where they think, hey, wait a minute, I think I have a great idea. It's going to work right away. You don't know what you're talking about. Like, how do you help them with that?
I think success leads to clues. So there will be clues along the way. And if there are no
Mm.
clues, I think it's kind of, well, it's not working. But you might find that, okay, I've hit this niche. This niche audience love it and they really want more of it. And so there's an opportunity then to grow, iteratively grow. And there's certain ways that you can grow. You can either decide, okay, I'm going to grow my audience. I'm going to find more people in my target market who want this product, and that's one way you can do it. Or the other way is you can then hit the same market but give them a different, additional features of your product, or you could do both.
Mm.
And I think that's what often happens. I think you sit there and you hit a niche, and you start to offer more and more and more, but you also grow to further markets or different states or different regions and that.
Yeah. Well, you shared one of the most painful innovations that you had and how it didn't come into fruition until like years later when you already presented before with influencer marketing. What is one of the most proudest ones that you've worked on? Is it with one of the biggest brands out there, or is it with a company that not many people know, but the success was incredible?
Um, Yeah, I think that there's some which I'm very proud of, but the ones interesting, the ones that have been most successful are sometimes the ones which are not the most interesting for some people because you just hit a certain niche and big businesses need it and you can sell to them.
Mhm.
So you can either decide to be a small cog, just give them a really small cog in a much bigger wheel, and at one point there, if I looked at the top 50 Fortune companies in the world, over half of them were using a product that we built, and it was around market research, understanding their competition, and how they're doing financially. And it's not the most exciting thing, but once again, once you show them the product and they go, "Whoa, I can see how my competition is doing
Mm,
financially around the world," it's difficult for them not to use that product.
mm,
Um, on the other side, though, probably the product I loved the most, which was the most fun, was once again solving finding a problem. I was building a social media monitoring platform, and I found that people were tweeting celebrities on TV shows and saying, love the dress you're wearing on this show. Where did you buy it? And of course, they weren't responding. And so we built an AI chatbot that responded and told people where they could buy the dress and gave them a link. And so, that's a much more fun and entertaining product
mm.
that people sort of blew people's minds. And so, yeah, that's the product I love talking about the most.
I kind of liked how you say, well, the most successful and most proud ones are not very exciting. And that kind of reminds me about real estate too, because I recently was talking to somebody and they had an issue with tenants and whatnot. And I was sharing some of my horror stories about tenancy and some of the people I was dealing with. And she goes, wow, I'm starting to second guess about doing real estate. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm only telling you about all the exciting ones because all the good ones is boring. So people don't
Yeah,
realize that a success is something is not as exciting and as glamorous as people think, and it's the consistency, it's the little changes, the little tweaks that makes a big difference. So, which is something that you alluded to. For people who are looking for like your assistance and having you work with them and whatnot, what are some of the things that you require first before they come to you? Because you're not the best person for everybody, and everybody's not the best client for you. So what are you looking for?
I think it's an understanding on um, iterative. You've got to be iterative. You've got to learn. Failure is an option. In fact, that's where we learn. And you've got to be open to that. We talk about a growth mindset nowadays. Absolutely. I think it's got to be a growth mindset. And there's got to be willingness to as I say, be stubborn in the vision, which is what Bezos says, be stubborn in the vision, but flexible on the details. So the best people to work with are the ones who are flexible on the details. They truly believe what they want to achieve, but they're happy to move and adjust with what they learn to get to that vision.
You talked about built using AI to create chatbots and all that kind of stuff. What do you see coming in the next few years here? Because AI is a big thing now. People are using ChatGPT, Gronk, and all that kind of stuff create lots of products out there. It's starting to become difficult to tell what's real and what's not real. How do you see AI transforming the space of products and innovation?
Yeah, it's going to be incredibly exciting. But I think what's really happening, already happening, and I'm using it myself, is very quickly you can come up with an idea. You can go to one of the services, I use V0, and and build a website just by having a chat.
Yeah.
And it will build that website. I don't need an engineer. I don't necessarily need a designer. Of course, I'd be better with an engineer or a designer, but within a couple of hours, I've been able to build a website and I've been able to launch it and sort of get some sort of feedback already. And I think that's what's going to happen is people will have an idea, and instead of spending hours or money trying to find people to build it and design it, they can pretty much just launch it rapidly and get some feedback on that. Yeah, and I think what's going to happen is a lot of people are going to be using that, which means you're going to get a flood of ideas, which means the best ideas are the ones that are going to have to work.
Right. So having said that, there's gonna be a lot of stuff out there. There's gonna be a bombardment of like products and visuals and websites and whatnot. How does one stand out from all that stuff? Even if you have a great product, even if you have a great idea, it's gonna be very difficult to like, hey, I'm over here. What would you suggest those people do?
Yeah, once again, I think it is understanding your target market
Yeah.
and truly understanding your product and the problem you're trying to solve for them. And it's the challenge for an entrepreneur is you've got to be a master of everything. And I,
Right.
I suppose what's happening now is that we don't necessarily have to be as much of a master on the technology side or the building side or the design side. I think we're going to have to be more of a master on telling a good story and understanding that target market and how to approach them and and knowing the differentiator, what makes you different to that. And you once you know what that is, how do you tell that story to that target market? And don't fall for the trap that we try to satisfy a problem for too many people. Go for that niche, hit that niche, get them to love it, and build from there.
Awesome. Great words of advice there. But I would like to also finish off by asking this one formal question for you, and that is, so if you had a few minutes to share a message, life message, business message, whatever that is, for people to remember you for, what would that message be?
I think it comes down to the assumptions. Every time you think of something and you say, I'm going to take an action, make sure you don't fall for the assumption trap. Am I making an assumption? Have I validated it?
Mhm.
Has it been proven? And then taking action on that. There's probably, if I have to look at the failures for most startups, it's because of that. I think that they fail.
Mhm.
I know my target market. I know what I know how to market to them. I know what problem they've got, and particularly people with knowledge in a particular space will just say, "Well, I know this, and I'll just go for it." Or often we are too afraid. I've got this idea, and something inside says we're a little bit afraid to know the truth. It's probably better to go out there, just build it and test it. Whereas it's probably a lot better to test those assumptions.
Totally agree. I mean, I think assumptions is one of the biggest things that stunt people from moving forward. Not only is it assumptions as to something works or doesn't work, but also assuming people don't like them, or assuming that people are dismissing them, or assuming people's feelings and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes it has to do with imposter syndrome as well. How would you guide somebody to overcome those thought processes, like the limiting beliefs, the imposter syndrome, the fear of failure, that type of stuff?
Well, the evidence is there. If you keep trying,
Mhm.
you'll see the evidence, and you just keep pushing. And it's just iterative, and you give it a go. What have you got to lose? And that's the one advantage of having smaller steps, is that you're not pushing yourself out, you know, in a big flashy way. You just, okay, this worked. I'm going to try this. This worked, I'm going to try this. So it's a smaller step. If you have, like I did in my first startup, spent an entire year building a product, launching it, and, across 600 stores, and then it fails, that's, whereas now you just, okay, I'm just going to push this out there. I'm just going to put up this landing page and see if people respond to it. And if they do, yeah, okay, that's great. Let me just email them and see what they think. And then it's just a small iterative step. You're not doing anything big and scary
Yeah,
on that
that's
side.
very, very true. And I think lots of people are scared because like, what if I get bombarded with all these messages and all that kind of stuff? But the truth is, you launch a website and it's like crickets. Nobody knows you're out there. So I usually tell my clients like, don't worry about it. Just put it out there and you wait and you talk about it and you drive traffic through it and all that kind of stuff. But at the very beginning, not much is gonna happen until you actually push it, kind of thing, right? And
You have
most
to
people
keep
don't know
working.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, and,
exactly.
and and the other key thing is absolutely is the other thing is you've got to treat feedback as a gift. The people who all tell you it's lovely and it's amazing, that's great, but you don't learn from that. It's the ones who give you feedback, which can be a bit harsh, and it may not be, whatever channel it comes through, you've got to look at it with open eyes and say, okay, that is what will help me build a better product. And it hurts, it hurts when you've built something you yourself, it's your own idea, you personally attached, and somebody gives it a bit of a critique. And but you've got to look at that and go, okay, thank you. I'm going to learn from that and I'm just going to build a better product off it.
And sometimes that's why your role is so important because people come to you and go, "Hey, what do you think?" And with your expertise and your journey, you're able to give them actual like constructive criticism versus some people online who say, "Oh, this is garbage," and then that's all they give you. So
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. It's sort of human nature, isn't it? I think we give other people advice quite easily,
mhm,
and but yet it's hard to give ourselves advice, isn't it?
exactly.
We're quite good at giving other people advice, but when it's us, we can't see the wood from the trees, and it's very hard for us to see that.
That's awesome. Before I let you go, I got five quick rapid fire questions to just have some fun. So
Yeah.
first question is you're stranded on a deserted island, one food to eat for the rest of your life, no consequence.
Sorry, say that again there.
One food to eat for the rest of your life, no consequence. So you still be in shape and healthy. What's that one food?
Oh, I love chicken, you know.
Good
Deep
choice.
fried chicken, I think. Deep fried chicken would be the one. If there are no consequences, I'd go for it. Thank you very much.
Great choice. So on that island, it's gonna be a Popeyes, a KFC,
That's
a
it.
Jollibee. It's all there. You're on a road trip. You're in this car for hours on end. Only one song that plays over and over and over again. What's that one song that you won't get sick of?
Mm. Hopefully, I might go for a very long song. What is the longest song that's around there? So I don't have to hear it too often. It was that Queen song, I think, that's sort of, 6 minutes long. I
Uh,
think I might go for that one. Whichever that one is, I'll go for it.
awesome. Hollywood calls and says, "Hey Kingsley, we love your story. I think it's very inspirational. We would love to do a biopic of you. Who would you cast to play you?"
Oh. Mm. Funny enough, someone told me the other day that I look like somebody from Hollywood. Problem is I didn't know who they were, so that was the biggest challenge. They obviously weren't famous enough. Um, yeah, that's a tough call. That's a tough call. I mean, I wish it would be someone like Brad Pitt, but I don't think I'm anywhere close to that. So yeah,
I'm sure they'll find a way to make it work.
yeah,
So Brad
yeah.
Pitt shows up at your door and he goes, "Hey buddy,
So then,
I got cast to play you. Let's hang out. What does that night look like to you?
oh,
Where are you taking?"
where do I take them? I mean, yeah, I'm based in London, so pretty much any of the sights of sounds. I would sort of go into central London, Trafalgar Square, and probably do a bit of a pub crawl from that point onwards. And of course, if you're Brad Pitt, you're gonna have lots of company, and so it'd be an amazing evening. And I think I'll just walk through central London alongside Brad Pitt and see what the world is really like through his eyes.
Awesome. And final question is I usually have you pick from a bunch of cards, but I think it's very suiting for me to ask you, how is success like salt? If salt was used as a metaphor for success, how is success like salt?
Say that again. That one I don't get. Sorry.
So if you're
How?
using salt as a
Yep.
metaphor for success,
Yeah.
how is
Ooh.
success like salt?
How is success like salt? That's a really good one. Um, yeah, I think what I would say in that one is you just add, taste the food first, see what it's like, add a little bit if it needs some, and if it needs more, just keep adding a little bit of salt.
Mhm.
But the key thing is, don't dump salt on straight away, and just keep adding salt bit by bit, tasting and adding. I
Uh,
think that's what I would
Success
say.
is all about tweaking and iterating and getting that right amount to become successful.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
Nicely done.
Yeah.
So that's how success is like salt. Thank you very much for your time, your stories, your comments, your advice. Do you have any final words for everybody out there? And also, what's the best way for people to get in touch?
Yeah, well, I really appreciate your time. It's been a privilege. I'm on LinkedIn. Obviously, you can see the SALT test. Also, if you want to go through the digital version of the SALT test, there's growthmap.org. Talking about AI. In that there we're using AI to actually help you find your target market and the differentiators and all those. So yeah, find me on LinkedIn. Send me a message if you want something. Growthmap.org as well. Fantastic.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time, your stories, your knowledge and wisdom. Thank you very much. So for everybody, make sure you get in touch with Kingsley. Obviously, he knows what he's talking about when it comes to developing products, helping your ideas become successful, come to fruition and whatnot. So get in touch with Kingsley. My name is Fong, and until next time, today is the day to lock up peak potential. We'll see you later.